Internets. How are you guys? This is Chazzy and welcome back to 8-Bit Chazzy, the segment on this channel where I review the many games that I play over the years, both on and off of YouTube. And today I'm going to be covering a true masterpiece in the gaming community. For the very first time ever, I'm going to be discussing this game in depth. It is one of my favorite games of all time, and with very good reason, because today I'm going to be covering BioShock. Oh, BioShock, man. Developed by 2K Boston and 2K Australia and published by, well, you guessed it, 2K. This game was released in 2007 and it is a first-person shooter, and honestly, it truly represents, the essence of gaming as an art form, because you play as the player character named Jack, who discovers this underground city called Rapture, right? And at some point, something went wrong down there, there was the discovery of this, this genetic material called Adam, which grants you superpowers which you can use to fight against the many denizens of Rapture, so you have, mutated people and some really scary big mechanical dudes called Big Daddies, while you try to uncover, the story behind it, while you're turning all of the defenses of Rapture against him, it's very cool. This game was actually made using the Unreal Engine, so it actually looked really well back then, right? I played it on the Xbox 360. But it was also released for PS3 and Windows and Mac OS X and even iOS, I have never played the mobile version of this game. Obviously it's not as good as the console version, but man, I'm not really curious, honestly. I prefer the 360 version. I love the way that the game takes a lot of philosophical lines of thought to apply to the story and the main setting, like 20th century dystopian and utopian, works, right? I think it looks really cool. Everything about this game is awesome. It screams perfection. It won quite a few different awards, including Game of the Year, but we're gonna get to that later. I love this game so much, man. This to me is honestly timeless. It's perfect, it's incredible, and there's nothing wrong with it, even still to this day. Almost 20 years later, right? 2007, we're in 2025, so 18 years later, this game still holds a very special place in my heart, right? And I haven't played the remastered version yet. I haven't played BioShock 2, but I have played Infinite. For some reason I skipped that, but today I'm gonna cover just the original because it honestly deserves an entire review just on its own. This game right here, man, was truly ahead of its time. It's breathtaking, and I don't know, man. I don't even know where to begin, honestly. I really don't even know where to begin. But before I actually go in depth and cover the game itself, let's take a look at one quick little clip here of it before we continue.
Where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality, I chose to build Rapture. But my city was betrayed by the weak.
Now, the story itself takes place in 1960, where the player character Jack is the only survivor of a plane crash, and he goes into a lighthouse where there's a bathysphere that takes him down underwater into the city of Rapture. And there, he actually meets there's this disembodied voice who refers to himself as Atlas, who contacts him, and says that he needs help saving his family, who are trapped in a bathysphere somewhere else. And as you make your way through the city, you start to meet some of the characters. Some of them are a little insane and others aren't, You start to meet the enemies as well, like the splicers, who are kind of basically mutated humans who got crazy with the Adam injections, right? You also meet the little sisters, who you have a choice of either to, take their life and harvest the Adam, or actually spare them, so you can get less Adam but also save their lives. Then at some point you meet Dr. Bridget Tenenbaum, who tries to intervene and insists that you should spare the little sisters, who are actually protected by these big mutated diver monsters called the Big Daddies, who are always escorting the girls here and there. And it's cool. Now, as you fight your way through, through Rapture itself, you start to go through different districts, as you make your way to Ryan's lair. Ryan is actually Andrew Ryan is the one who you're looking for, who's kind of like what we believe is to be the main bad guy, right? As far as I can remember. And you fight your way through the denizens, and there's also turrets that you can either fight and hack, And as you make your way through the game, you unlock more areas, and you can get more things, more items to get your health better. You can upgrade, upgrade your Adam, your Eve, all of that stuff. Eve? No, I don't think it's Eve. Well, you have upgrades in the freaking game, okay? Now, as you make your way through the city, you start to meet other characters like J.S. Steinman and also the musician Sander Cohen, who you can actually early on shoot and get an achievement, but if you take a photo of his corpse, but then you can also not kill the bastard and go up to his room and get another achievement, You can collect a lot of audio diaries as well. There are quite a lot of collectibles in this game here, that flesh out the story a little bit more. At some point you finally get to Andrew Ryan's office, you know, and there you discover the truth of your origins, because you're actually Ryan's illegitimate son, right, who was actually an embryo, you know, because, well, apparently he was the product of a mistress, so he was unwanted, undesired, so he was discarded away from society, you know. And then we discover that there's actually this trigger phrase that actually makes Jack do things without even questioning it, which is "would you kindly," you know. Throughout the game we actually see this phrase happening, Atlas using this to manipulate us to do things for him, but we don't know that as the player, you know. Then at some point, for some reason, Andrew Ryan decides to die by his hand, you know, by Jack's hand. So he says, "would you kindly," you know, and asks him to, you know, asks him to club him to death with the golf club, you know, the golf club that he's wearing. I still don't know why exactly this happened, but it did, right? So this was a very big shock. But then we actually discover that, you know, Atlas is actually Frank Fontaine, who's the main bad guy all along, controlling everything and manipulating us, right? So we find this out through the audio diaries and other miscellaneous collectibles. And at this point, you're probably pretty well upgraded, so you go and fight him, you know, you go to his lair, and now you actually have, it's actually a really creative boss fight where you have to, if I remember, inject him with the correct plasmids. So if he's blue, inject him with the hot one, and if he's red, inject him with the cold one, something like this. You know, the little sisters actually come and help you, so you guys can eventually kill him together, you know. It's actually a really cool boss fight. Now, the thing about this game here is that there are two different ways that the story can end, right? If you save all of the little sisters, or I think all except for one, you get the good ending, you know, where you guys escape rapture and you grow old together, you know. He takes care of them and pretty much raises them as his daughters, right? And they eventually surround him on his deathbed. But if you harvest all of them or most of them, then you're going to get the bad ending, which you know, apparently says that, you know, the splicers all come up to the surface, you know, and also, you know, they take control of a submarine with nukes on it, and you hear Dr. Tenenbaum in the background saying how Jack, you know, oh sorry, I made the camera tremble here, how I made Jack, you know, he stole the secrets of the world, and not because of him the world's gonna go to shreds and stuff, you know. And the more little sisters that you harvest, the more aggressive his voice becomes. So I think that's actually a really cool detail as well. But that's pretty much it. That's essentially the main narrative, right? Assuming, from what I can remember, and also pulling a little bit from my little cheat sheet that I pulled together here. Before we continue and talk about the game itself, let's take a look at another clip. Here's the thing, guys, this game has a lot of different themes, right? And the game design itself, the overall aesthetic in the world and all of these things, right? Like, there are so many different allegories to it that I believe that if I go into detail, this video is going to be like 30 to 35 minutes long. So I'm going to focus just on the gameplay itself, you know, because I don't know, man, I should make a separate video later just talking about the thematic essence of BioShock, right? But the game itself, it was based on System Shock 2, right? And it's actually a very good spiritual successor of sorts to it, you know? Because even though it's primarily an FPS, you know, first-person shooter, there are some stealth elements there as well. I'm not a big fan of using stealth in games. It makes me nervous. It makes my anxiety skyrocket. I like to get in there and just shoot everything, you know, like in Call of Duty. So not a big fan of stealth, but, you know, there are some times where, because the game has a lot of really creepy themes where you're alone in the dark by yourself and with a silent protagonist, you know, sometimes you do have to stay and hide, especially in the beginning. But as you start to upgrade yourself and get better weapons and more confidence, you start to, you know, feel like there's not really that much danger, you know. So you can collect different weapons and plasmas that give you more upgrades and more abilities, like magic abilities, you know. But it's actually Adam, it's what the game says, is kind of like a way for you to, you know, harvest energy to use against your foes, right? And it actually does really well. Different combinations of attacks work better against different enemies, right? So for example, you have the big daddies, right? You can get a submachine gun with regular bullets, but it's gonna take longer to defeat them. But if you upgrade to armor piercing bullets, then you can take them down much more easily, right? The big daddies do give some really good rewards. You can pick up things and, you know, loot enemies as you kill them, right? So I think it's really cool. And you can also, I said earlier something about Eve, and it actually is in the game. It's what the injection is called. You know, you give yourself Eve injections, like with the syringes, to give yourself more Adam, you know. You can also consume alcohol and cigarettes to make yourself be better. It's very similar to Fallout 3, you know, except here the things that you consume are actually beneficial, whereas in Fallout it seems like everything has radiation and freaking kills you, you know. So you can also Something that I think the game does really well is the regeneration system, you know, where if you die in the game, you can actually respawn via a nearby Vita chamber, and what's really cool is that you respawn in real time. So if you were fighting an enemy and that enemy was now, you took down half of their health before they killed you, when you respawn, you're still gonna have half health, you know, so you can literally go and finish the battle where you left off. I think that's really nice, right? There is a patch where you can actually turn it off to make the game more challenging, but unless you're freaking crazy, you know, it's nah. You know, it actually restarts a save game, so it's actually a lot harder. There's an achievement on the Xbox 360 that's called Brass Balls, which is to finish the entire game, I believe, on the hardest difficulty without using a Vita chamber once, you know. It's Iron Man mode, you know, no Vita chambers, and if you die, you restart from the beginning. You know, you guys are freaking crazy, right? So now you have different ways for you to face challenges. There's also a camera that you can use to take photos of enemies, so you can research them and you can acquire better upgrades and learn more about them, and also you know, learn better defenses, you know, and better attacks to better suit your combat needs, you know, so it's really nice. You can also hack security turrets, you know, security systems and security turrets, you know, and as you upgrade your hacking ability, you can do it much better. The upgrade system, I think, is very lenient. The learning curve isn't very steep, and you can pick up on it pretty easily, and I think it's really enjoyable. It's actually kind of addictive to keep going, you know, and do research, and the Xbox version has a lot of really good achievements for it, you know. The achievement list in this game is awesome, honestly, you know, it's very easy for you to get the full 1000G, except for the Brass Balls one, which is 100 gamer score, but still, man, right? You can keep boosting yourself more and more, and you can also collect money, for example, you know, from the Rapture itself or from defeating foes. It's really cool. And you can also, like, for example, you can use the money to, you know, to restock on ammo, health, or Eve, or other stuff from vending machines. No, I think it's really cool. So it's very similar to that. You can also hack vending machines to make the items cost less. It's really cool. As you make your way through the game, you can collect audio diaries as well that will flesh out the story, like I said earlier, and a few other collectibles as well. And I believe that, there's also the Gatherer's Garden, where you can actually buy upgrades, you know, and Eve and stuff, so that's always something to look forward to. And if I remember correctly, you can save the game through Vita chambers, regardless of whether you live or die, you know. Now, there's a limited number of plasmids and tonics that you can use at any given time, you know, actively, but the more that you mix them up, you know, and try to be creative, the more that you can, you know, take down the enemy. So I think it's really cool. It's really not that difficult, and as long as you're paying attention and be creative with your kills, you can actually get through the game pretty easily, in my opinion, right? That's what I think. That's essentially the main crust of the gameplay, you know. Now, before I talk a little bit about the game's legacy itself, let's take a look at another clip. One of the reasons that BioShock is still considered to this day one of the greatest video games ever made is because the artistic style and the compelling storytelling, you know, among other factors, are what made video games be seen as an art form, you know. It was the first foray into this artistic medium for video games, right? Because it allowed people to see games in a whole new light, you know, the ability to engage players into the story, you know, with you know, the sound, the visuals, the story, everything about it was awesome, right? The themes as well. The narrative aspects of this game are actually very underrated, right? Because the twist at the end where you're actually being mind controlled by a trigger phrase, right? It's like, it highlights that theme that the game plays on, that you have the illusion of individual control. You, as the player character, Jack, you think you're in control until you find out that you're not, and it throws you for a loop, you know? It's freaking crazy, man. Other games have tried to do this, but they generate more controversies, you know. So this, right? Other games had tried had failed to break into this cultural discourse, you know, this place where games can be appreciated as an art form, and BioShock did that so perfectly, you know. The Smithsonian Institution even announced back in 2011 they were going to hold an exhibit just dedicated to video games as art, you know, and BioShock was among the winners that they wanted to be included, you know, in this exhibition. So I think it was really cool. Literally everything about this game, you know, universal acclaim for everything, you know, the narrative, the themes, visual design, the setting, the gameplay, the characters, everything, right? So that's why I think that this game is perfect, and my rating for it is going to be a very solid and well-deserved 10 out of 10. I'm gonna get that out of the way right now. This game to me is truly a masterpiece in the gaming community. I don't know if I have given any other games on my 8-bit Chazzy playlist a 10 out of 10, but if I did, they were deserved. But this one here, man, when I played it for the first time way back in 07, I think I played it on launch day. You know, I remember I played it. I was still living in Florida. I had my 360. I played it. It was either in 07. I'm pretty sure I played it the year that it was released. Maybe not like the week it came out, but at some point I got around to it, and I got so addicted, you know, because it also plays a little bit on some horror themes. You know, it is a little scary and unsettling at times, especially when you're playing at night, right? And the entire game is dark. It's underwater, you know, there's no sunlight coming in. It's just the very ominous setting, you know, the very ominous lighting of the underground city, you know, the lights, you know, here and there. It's very creepy. It kind of reminds me of Ghostwire Tokyo, right? It's very, very, you know, like, how can I say? The game is fun. It's awesome, and at sometimes you might feel like it downplays the horror, but if you stop and think about it, the game is actually really creepy, right? It can pretty much be classified as survival horror, because if you're a scaredy cat, then you don't know what's around the corner, you know? You're by yourself. You don't have a team around you. It's just you, the player character, the silent protagonist going up against everybody, and as soon as you see a little girl walking around the corner, you better run, because you know there's a big daddy right behind her, you know? I believe that big daddies only attack when provoked, you know, so if you're just there chilling and you don't provoke him or the little sister, nothing happens. I don't know if that's a thing, or maybe you can buy a plasmid or a tonic to make it a thing, I don't know, but still, they're intimidating as heck, you know? Then you get to the sequel where you play as one. So yes, that's what I think about the game. I think it's awesome. I think it's really great, you know? And to me, honestly, it's timeless, bro. The remastered collection, I gotta get around to playing that at some point. I never played the second game, but I will, you know, and maybe I'll even review it here as well. It'll probably be just as good as this one. So that's pretty much it, man. You know, that's all I can say. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about this. You know, if you liked the game, if you enjoyed it as well, what your rating would be. And if you happen to like this video, please go ahead and give it a like, and also subscribe to my channel, because I release videos every single week, and while you're at it, hit the notification bell too, so you can know exactly what time I upload, and it's all good. Subscribe to my other channels. You know, you got Chazzy Plus, Chazzy Cast, Chazzy Cast BR for podcasts in different languages, and that's it, man. And so this is Chazzy signing out for now, and as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Roll the final clip, if there is one, and then the outro screen.